If you're buying older games, chances are you've noticed that prices have definitely been going up. The last couple of years specifically have been especially rough, though it's happened naturally over time as well. It's great that more people than ever are appreciating titles from all eras. However, sometimes it feels like there's an air of despair whenever I talk to someone who's in the market. I've started looking at a couple of price tags myself, yet I generally feel like I have not been as affected as many other people in either my wallet or emotions. So I want to talk a little bit about my approach to picking out games. I've found some tactics over the years that have helped me keep a generally positive mindset when shopping around. Some of these I've been utilizing for the better part of my life, though as my budget has grown, I've applied new approaches to help focus my spending. Now, these aren't some hot tips to get a cheap copy of Gotcha Force or Thousand Arms. Instead, I'm focused more on finding affordable games to explore. So the first thing I always do is avoid shopping for monetary value. This is probably the easiest, most straightforward, and longest running rule I have. No matter the price, my assumption is that a game is worth $0 as soon as I buy it. Do I expect the market to explode tomorrow? No, yet even if I know it's not worthless in the short term, I basically treat it as such. I personally don't want to say there's anything wrong with shopping with investments in mind, but I don't like thinking about how a title will accrue value in the long term. That doesn't mean don't look for deals. I often will hold out for a cheaper copy of a game, yet even if I find a good price, what I really want is just to make sure I'm spending the equivalent to what I think it's worth to play. And that's not always the discounted amount. For me, even $8 was not worth it for Kingdom Hearts 3. I'm sure it's great, it's just not what I'm looking for right now. The second thing I also do is make a lot of low-cost bets. It's pretty rare that you'll see me chasing around expensive games, unearthed hidden gems, or whatever. Sure, I have my exceptions, but I like to explore a system's library by playing titles I know little or nothing about. Now, I'm not saying buy literally every random thing on the shelf. I think it's more important that I'm drawn to it, though it's often with something small, like the developer, concept, setting, gameplay elements, art style, or whatever else piques my interest. Going in basically blind means frequently these won't be the best experiences ever, yet there's occasionally some cool stuff. While I highly recommend keeping a diversity of platforms in mind to maintain a large window of opportunity, the Wii is my favorite place for this right now since it's a deep library and much of it is ignored. I bought Battle Rage for $5. Why? It's a mech game on the Wii. That sounds pretty neat and I've never heard of it. Surprise, it's not great and I would not recommend it to anyone. Taking this approach is going to leave you with what would often be considered duds, though I personally can enjoy a title's unique elements even if the other parts are lacking. Keeping an open mind is a big part of this for me because if I'm just looking for the surefire hits, it's more likely I'll be competing in that space with somebody else. Eventually, I'll find some personal gems. Normally, I'd look at Wii Ski and go like, wow, that looks like shovelware, but I saw that Bandai Namco logo on it, so I gave it a shot, and a few bucks later, it's one of my favorite titles for the system. Now, you don't necessarily need to be as outlandish as me. While not on the Wii, another example I can use is Tiny Bullets for the original PlayStation. I had never heard of it. Looking at the box, I could tell it was some kind of 3D platformer. That's a pretty desirable genre, especially from the late 90s. While it's no AAA classic, it's an awesome Japan-only game with Zelda-style dungeon elements. It also has a great aesthetic, though is a bit clunky to control. As of today, my small YouTube channel is the first thing that comes up when you search for it, so hey, I'll even call this one a hidden gem. Though I think most of you could look at this game and recognize it as something you'll take a chance on. However, as others begin taking that jump, obviously the harder it becomes to get. So something I've been doing in more recent years is really going risky with importing games from Japan. The language barrier is definitely a challenge. At the same time, the more likely it looks like simply punching stuff will progress the game, the more people will probably be importing it, possibly affecting things like the cost. There are exceptions, like Tiny Bullet, which was very accessible, but in the end, looking for experiences that require zero interactions with Japanese text limits what I can buy. The further I step outside of others' comfort zones, the more I get away from their purchasing windows. Now, there are smart ways to identify and make educated purchases on what kind of Japanese language games you can approach, and maybe I should do a video on that at some point, so please comment if you're interested. Though like with my domestic shop, shopping, I'm very mindful of keeping costs low here, which can be a challenge with overseas shipping. I highly recommend buying from one seller at a time so you can bundle an order. You'll save a lot, and it'll also help focus your attention on a narrower set of options. Now, if you've watched this channel before, you know this is where I plug Japan Retro Direct because I love digging through their listings and grabbing a bunch of games all in one go. I've been shopping with them for 10 years and it's always a great experience. And because I bundle them in one shipment, I can make those same low-cost bets where I'm just like, yeah, I'll try that for $5 and to some degree kind of forget about the shipping costs per title. I guess at this point I should have like somewhere disclosure that I know the owner, he is a super nice dude, but I don't get any like discounts or anything like that. So one thing I like doing is getting into something weird, man. Hey, being a Zelda fan is cool and all, but what if you just like really got into some specific niche thing? My name is Ben, and I own copy number 79 out of 100 of 24 Tokyo, and it only cost me $2, and I'm also probably one of 3 people who care. Obviously, a passion isn't something that can be forced, though I will say this, especially when I'm jumping into a title that doesn't have a major following online, I try to be curious. Learn about who worked on it. Have they worked on similar concepts before? Were others in the genre taking different approaches to the same problems the game had? Or did other media launch alongside it? And that may drive future purchases too. I'm not saying every release is a goldmine of trivia or a guarantee I'll find a new place to explore, but sometimes you will find that deep hole. 10 years ago, I imported Blue Breaker Burst 2 for the PlayStation, and for some reason, I became kind of obsessed with this developer, HuNext, which weirdly enough, despite being kind of like a no-name team, has been around since 1992 and is still putting out stuff today. Now, I try to pay attention to everything they've made. Through them, I found the PCFX home console. I started looking at the otome genre. I learned more about the late 90s Bishoujo scene in Japan. I got weird into their romantic adventure game First Kiss Story. Now I own all this garbage. Learning about the history and narrative of this developer has been super fun and has probably influenced the type of games I play significantly. I doubt I'd be so into the PCFX without them, and since most people don't really care about the expansive history of HuNext, I can get most of their stuff on the cheap. It feels like I have my own little personal treasure trove of knowledge that I've gained from these things that someday I hope I can share with you in some meaningful way. The last thing I'm going to talk about today, and probably the most recent since thankfully my budget has grown enough that I can kind of do this, is buying for preservation. Archive.org is an amazing website with random people constantly uploading awesome stuff, from scans of manuals, dev materials, abandoned software, etc. There's a lot of groups and individuals out there doing wonderful work. What if you did too? While a lot of people talk about the preservation of media and history of the games industry, I don't think most people act on it. Yes, I could spend $50 to $100 or more on a popular title that had hundreds of thousands of copies made, but what good does that really do? Especially if it's readily available to be played in a variety of alternative ways. So I recently started looking into where that money could be better spent. For example, I picked up photocopies of concept art for Team Innocent on the PCFX, and while they're maybe not the flashiest things to own, it's the first I've seen of these anywhere. Honestly, I don't even get personal joy out of owning them. However, I'm glad I was able to upload them for the, hopefully, growing audience of people who care about this title. Though there are some times I can justify a desirable purchase if I look hard enough. The packaging for Sin and Punishment on the Nintendo 64 is pretty awesome, and I'd be lying if that didn't play a role in me importing it for like $70. However, despite it having a pretty big fan base and following, nobody seemed to have scanned the Japanese manual, which was bizarre to me, given this is a beloved treasure game and kind of like a cult Nintendo hit. It even has a lot of neat art in it. So here you go, it's on archive.org for you and for the at least 800 other people who have looked at it so far. And I got an awesome game. Now to wrap up, in saying these approaches I take, I think it's pretty clear many of these things apply specifically to not only my tastes, but also my desire to learn more about games as a whole. I'm also not saying this is necessarily a path to a healthy collector mindset. I've heard many people say this type of broad, aimless purchasing is a bad way to go, or even calling it hoarding, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad take on it. It's probably true to some degree. However, if I'm paying the amount it's worth to try a title, then I've gotten the value I need out of it. And when the day comes when I need to shed my games, I don't think I'll regret the purchases I made, even if it amounts to $0. What's important for me right now is keeping open an ocean of possibilities in front of me, and because that, no major shift in the market prevents me from finding new interesting things to explore. And when it comes to playing games, especially the popular stuff, there are options out there outside of hunting down some 30-year-old dusty box. If you're loving old games, I hope you keep doing so, and let me know in the comments if there's anything that keeps you sane when the market gets rough. If you know someone in the dumps about buying games, maybe share them this video. If you're curious about the more investment side of things, I'd highly recommend my podcast with Keith Shizuo, where we talk about how he builds value through trade-ins. I also have a PCFX video where I talk a bit about how I enjoy Japanese games, though that's not the core topic of it. Again, comment if you want me to do something a bit more specific in that regard.